everyone. Yay, it's March. It's poetry at Caffe, Lena. Yay, we're here. I'm very happy to see you. Thank you for making the drive out tonight. And I know why you did, though, because we have an amazing featured poet. We have Bunkong Tuon as our featured poet. He's an easy person to get out and listen to. He gives an amazing reading. We're going to start the night off with his reading. And let me introduce myself. My name's Carol Grazer. I'm the host for Poetry Night here at Caffe Lena. We are going to have BK come up, read his poems, and then we will do open mic poetry for the rest of the night. I'm going to start us off with a poem by Marge Piercy, and then I'll introduce BK for you. This is called Doors Opening, Closing on Us. Maybe there is more of the magical in the idea of a door than in the door itself. It's always a matter of going through into something else. But while some doors lead to cathedrals arching up overhead like stormy skies, and some to sumptuous auditoriums, and some to caves of nuclear monsters, most just yield a bathroom or a closet. Still, the image of a door is liminal, passing from one place into another, one state to the other, boundaries and promises and threats, inside to outside, light into dark, dark into light, cold into warm, known into strange, safe into terror, wind into stillness, silence into noise. We slice our life into segments by rituals, each a door to a presumed new phase. We see ourselves progressing from room to room, dragging our toys along until the last door opens and we pass at last into was. Marge Piercy. And I apologize for ending with a line about just death, but that's poetry, and welcome to Poetry Night. Okay, BK Tuon is a Cambodian-American writer. He's a Pushcart Prize winner. He's a professor who teaches at Union College in Schenectady. His work has appeared in several lovely journals like the New York Quarterly, Massachusetts Review, Verse Daily. He has published several poetry collections. He's here tonight with a collection of greatest hits, and it's called What Is Left. It's a beautiful book. It's for sale in the back. He's also got copies of his first published novel for sale in the back called Cohen Khmer, which I probably not pronouncing right. That was published by Northwestern. He is also the poetry editor of Cultural Daily. Let's give him a huge welcome, BK Tuon. Get around me here.
Thank you very much, Carol, for having me, and thanks everybody for being here, and thanks to the folk at home. It's quite an honor to be standing on this stage of historic Caffe Lena. So I'm kind of nervous, but also excited to see familiar faces and new faces. Quite wonderful. I'll read some poems from What Is Left, and then some newer work. I think of my work as a teacher, as a writer, as a parent, as someone who looks at sort of the Cambodian genocide and try to kind of document what life is like for survivors of the genocide, and how they rebuilt their lives. That is my main sort of focus as a writer, a poet, teacher, and also a father. Those things are very much connected for me. So this book of poems called What Is Left, what you'll notice is there are a lot of poems about family. But I'll start with this idea of, what is left after war, after genocide. And that's the title poem for this collection. What is left? What is left after war is the gratitude for what is left. My dreams are filled with ghosts looking for home. The dead speak to the living through my poetry. Each time I write, I rebuild, retrieve what was stolen. Nothing is dead until I let it. English is not the language of my birth. It is the language of death. More bombs drop on Cambodia's countryside than in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I was bombarded by this language. I had no choice but to use it. I stand on the precipice, listening. Ghosts are ancestors asking for light. I holler to celebrate the dead and the living. Lok ye, lok ta, bok, ma, bu, min, om. Your tongues are my tongue, and we are telling. What is left after war is the gratitude for what is left. Thank you. This one is a poem for my elders, my uncles, aunts, grandmother, grandfather. And I tried to imagine what was it like after the Cambodian genocide, after the Khmer Rouge regime fell. What was it like to pack up and leave Cambodia, leave family, friends, loved ones? So this is for them. It's called The Carrying. I am what is left after the war that orphaned a generation. And what is left is knowing that what remains is worth carrying. The way the earth carried our tired bodies, how the moon kept still while we crossed jungles. Leaves whispered prayers and sunlight kept us warm. The way Lok Ye carried me on her back, the back that carried the land and fog, the hungry mouth of children and grandchildren, the withered body of her husband, the grime of a widow who raised 7 children all on her own, the way rivers carried our sorrows, and how my aunts carried the death of their youth, cradled to their chests like broken dolls, how we all carried memories of my mother, how my father carried himself after we had left. At night, in the refugee camp, my uncles cradled hope that was as real as to believe that no matter what came before, a life was still a life. Then they turned to their corners of dirt and wept. There are lights shining, so I can't see folks. I hope everybody is, I don't know if enjoying is the right word, but that everyone is doing well. And again, thanks for being here. So I was just, again, these are poems that are central to my being, and they are sort of important because they have to do with, with family. And this one is what I call my origin story poem, and it's a memory that I have of my mother. And I was young, and I thought she was sleeping, but she wasn't. And there were people going into the house, monks and others, and I thought that they were being rude and wondering why they were disrupting my mother sleeping. But later on, I learned that that was sort of my last image of her and on her deathbed, and that was a kind of a funeral rite for her. It's called Under the Tamarind Tree. The child sits on the lap of his aunt, under the old tamarind tree outside the family home. The tree stands still, quiet, indifferent. The house sways on stilts. Monks in saffron robes and nuns with shaved heads, lips darkened with betel nut stain, sit chanting prayers for the child's mother. Incense perfumes the hot, dry air. There emerges a strange, familiar song between the child and the aunt that day, a distant one, melodic but harsh, as if the strings are drawn too tight. Each time the child hears prayers coming from the house, he cries. Each time he cries, the aunt, a girl herself, pinches the boy's thigh. And that's it. It's the process of writing is like you write and explore these memories, and you discover when you reach at the end of the poem that you were not the only one suffering, that it was the aunt too who lost an older sister, my mother. So that's interesting how writing is an act of discovery. I wish I'd bring lighter poems, and I will figure something out, so bear with me. Bear with me. But this one isn't light, but is about my father. I didn't know him. When I led a term abroad in Vietnam, I had this opportunity to go down to the Mekong Delta. And that was where his family, that was where he came from. Back before the French moved borders around, that area was known as Cambodia. But now, my family, my father's family, they are considered ethnic minority, Khmer ethnic minority in Vietnam. So when I went there, it was just such an incredible experience because I was meeting my father's family for the first time. And, as a writer, but also as I consider myself an orphan, I wanted so much to know what he was like. So I was just really hungry for stories and asking them all kinds of questions. And this is one of the stories that they told me about him and what he did. So, it's a little bit tough in terms of the content, so be warned. It's called Debt. My father walked up to the Khmer Rouge after they killed the children and opened their stomachs to eat the livers. My father got down on his knees, clasped hands overhead, and begged them for a sliver of a victim's liver so that I would not starve. While everyone was sleeping, my father snuck into the kitchen, stole a branch of coconuts, and buried them in the woods. Each time I cried from hunger, he disappeared into the night, dug up a coconut, gave me the juice to drink, and with dirt-encrusted fingers, spooned out the flesh for me, his only child. So this one is under the Khmer Rouge times. The Khmer Rouge frowned upon the idea of family, the idea of family love, because that was threatening to their authority, to their control. So families were separated, and a lot of anyway, I don't want to talk too much about providing the context of it, but the point had to do with when I became a father for the first time, For me, it was a very meaningful moment because, I had all this history, sort of behind me or under or over me, and to have a child, for me, it was a kind of resistance to what the Khmer Rouge stood for. So this poem is for my daughter, and she made me into a father. Anyway. And it's called Moon in Khmer, and my daughter's Khmer name is called Chanda, and that's translated as Moon in Khmer, and it is for her. Moon in Khmer, you are light when the sun is punched out and darkness reigns. You are the antidote to what came before. Black blood, black heart, hands tied, kneeling before a ditch of human bones. Your laughter pierces the silence of night that bore witness to the once blood-soaked land. Your existence is resistant to the genocide that orphaned your father and drove his family out of the homeland. You are love against the hate of the Khmer Rouge. This is the meaning of your name, Chanda. This is how to defeat Pol Pot. I wasn't going to read this one, but I think I should just because it's a little bit more positive. And the story goes something along this line. Around 2018, I wrote an entire book for my daughter. All the poems were about her, because I was a father for the first time. And also, there was a president that had all kinds of sentiment that I felt like I had to write about, and I had to, let my daughter know that, I'll support her in the best way I can. A whole book of poems for my firstborn. So when my secondborn came, my wife said to me, you need to write some poems for your son. He was born during the pandemic, so it was so difficult to write poems about, because it was just a tough time. But the good news is I have this poem for him, and it's the last poem. That's powerful, right? Last, concluding poem. So I hope it helps. I hope and my son's Khmer name is Riti, and it's about us, my wife, my daughter, and I, waiting for him to arrive. Letter to my unborn son. I can tell you about strength, how the sun warms our skins, how the moon turns tide, the way your mother abstained from coffee, watches what she eats, her body a temple in your honor. And I can tell you about beauty, the bird with red bushy tail, skips from rose bush to rose bush, sings sweet melody for all to hear, unhinged by the joy of morning light. Your sister caresses her mother's belly, presses her red cheek on it, and listen. Whisper tenderness to baby brother. But when the white dove spreads its wings and soars over the hospital, and the leaves are still, and the day glows soft, bright, like baby skin, and you, dear heart, shaken from exhaustion, your journey into light. Oh, how my body trembles with the weight of you. So it was good, right? It was worth it. It was as good as a whole book of poems. You have to tell me that, please. No, don't tell me, tell my wife. You just, do we have 2 more or 3 more, Carol? Let me know.
3 sounds good.
Okay, well, this one is, at most readings, I would have an audience come up to me and said, so you've done all this writing. Do you feel like you're healed now? It's a good, and I would say, writing has always helped me. That definitely giving a kind of name and narrative to the past, to pain. But I always say that I don't think you could ever fully recover, fully heal. You just learn how to live with it and claim it and call it your own. So this is a poem about that. A hole in my stomach. History is a wheel that spits us out without regret. That was what the Khmer Rouge taught. And when the wheel of history was done with my family, I was left with a hole in my stomach. My navel a gaping mouth. I have been filling this hole with the soil of memories and a child's desires. I water it with stories and poems until I am full and warm. In the back, in the dark of a summer night sky, stars shine on this hole in my stomach. I look down at it and call it mine. In the dark, in the night, I feed it with songs orphan sings. In the night, under the bright stars, I look at this hole and call it home. I'm here. That means my wife is taking care of our 2 kids. So this one is just for her, and this is before we had kids. Magical moments there. Oh crap, this is on YouTube. I'm in trouble. It's called Wanting Kids. My wife and I rented a house at Cayuga Lake. I rose before the sun and cast my line out into darkness. I caught crappies and felt the sun warming my face. The fish were cold and slimy in my hands. I went back to the house, washed up, made coffee, and brought breakfast to our bedroom. I kissed my wife's forehead to wake her gently. I don't remember what was said between us, only the warm glow shining through the windows. We made love as easy as fish swimming in the lake. After the room returned to speech, she read her novel and I wrote. During lunch, I read poetry to her, between bites of sandwich and dark red cherries. And out the window, we watched a father teaching his daughter to fish. We walked to the boathouse, put on life jackets, and carried paddles. I pushed and hoisted myself onto the boat. She rowed. I wasn't a swimmer, but I wasn't scared. She led me to waters I had never been before. Her arms led us away from shore, and I was happy. And of course, we had kids. So I'm sorry. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. Last poem, and when I was young, growing up in Massachusetts, my grandmother took me to the temple, Buddhist temple in Revere. And I remember, the incense sticks and the perfumed water and the blessed water and monks chanting. And I associate those images with my grandmother. She's gone now. She passed away in 2015. But I would drive whenever I drive alone. I would pray the same kind of chanting that I heard in the temple. And for me, praying was my way of getting close to her. So this poem is my attempt to kind of capture the prayer as well as what I was praying and what I was thinking when it comes to my grandmother. So I'll do my best in terms of reciting the Balay, which is the sacred word, the sacred language of Cambodian Buddhism. So bear with me. And this is the last one, okay? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I pray, hands clapping the steering wheel. There's no temple where I live, and where I live, no one carries these memories. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I pray for bombs to float back up to the sky, slide firmly into the bellies of planes, for the planes to return home. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I pray for tanks rolling backwards, for soldiers uniting with families, for children to be unorphaned. Buddhang saranang gacchami. I pray for all wars to stop. I pray for all wars to stop. I pray for all wars to stop. Datnam saranam gacchami. I pray for the war in my head to stop, for no more a mother's grieving, for the reunification of the heart. Sangkang saranang gacchami. I pray for rain, hypnotic and endless, the misty scent of home, echoes in memory breaking through. Tattayam Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I pray for a return to the temple in Revere, for chanting in Palay. Tattayam Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I pray for burning incense, for monks in yellow and orange robes, for golden Buddha smiling in serenity. Dattiyam Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I pray for the perfumed water of yellow and pink flowers, blessing our bowed heads. Dattiyam Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I pray for ancestors to light my way on this dark road, for my hands to remain steady. Tattiyam Datnam Saranam Gacchami. I pray to you, Lukye, alive again, sitting on a bamboo mat, hands in prayer. Tattiyam Sankam Saranam Gacchami. And I, your eldest grandson, sit next to you, hands clapped, praying in devotion. Thanks.